The fluorescent lights of St. Catherine's Hospital burned into my retinas as I lay on the surgical gurney, counting backward from 100 like they told me to. 99, 98. My hands were cold, clammy, shaking under the thin hospital blanket. 97. I could hear my mother's voice echoing in my head from that morning, sharp as broken glass. Caroline, this is what sisters do. This is what family does. Stop being so damn selfish. 96. My father hadn't even looked at me when he said it would all be over soon, that I was doing the right thing, that God would bless me for my sacrifice. 95. The anesthesiologist was adjusting something on the IV pole above me, her face a mask of professional calm. 94. I thought about Ryan, my brother, lying in another operating room down the hall, his kidneys failing, his body shutting down, and I tried to feel something other than this gnawing pit in my stomach that whispered I was making the biggest mistake of my life. 93. That's when the doors exploded open. My 8-year-old nephew Jackson came sprinting through like a tiny tornado in light-up sneakers, his face red and streaked with tears, his voice cracking with panic and something else, something that sounded like rage. "Aunt Caroline, wait! Stop! You have to stop!" The medical team froze. The surgeon, Dr. Brennan, a tall woman with steel gray hair and steady hands, turned toward the doors with a frown creasing her forehead. The anesthesiologist pulled her hand away from the IV. A nurse near the instrument tray actually gasped. Jackson was sobbing now, his small chest heaving, his hands balled into fists at his sides. "Aunt Caroline, should I tell everyone why Uncle Ryan really needs your kidney? Should I tell them what he did?" The room went silent, except for the steady beep of the heart monitor attached to my chest. I stared at Jackson, at this little boy who loved dinosaurs and Minecraft and chocolate chip pancakes, and I saw something ancient and terrible in his eyes, something no child should ever have to carry. My mouth went dry. The anesthesia fog in my brain started to clear just enough for me to croak out, "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" Jackson looked at Dr. Brennan, then back at me, tears streaming down his round cheeks. Uncle Ryan made my mom sick. He made her sick on purpose. And now she's gone and he's lying to everyone and you're going to give him your kidney so he can keep being alive and keep hurting people. And I can't let that happen, Aunt Caroline. I can't. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dr. Brennan stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Son, I need you to step back so we can—" "No!" Jackson's scream cut through the air like a siren. "No, you don't understand. Nobody understands. Uncle Ryan poisoned my mom. He put something in her drinks. She kept getting sicker and sicker, and the doctors couldn't figure out why, and then she died. And nobody believed me when I said I saw him do it. But I did. I saw him." My blood turned to ice. The beeping on the heart monitor started to accelerate. I tried to sit up, but the restraints they'd placed on me to keep me still during surgery prep held me down. My voice came out strangled. "Jackson, baby, what are you saying?" He wiped his nose on his sleeve, his whole body trembling. "I'm saying Uncle Ryan killed my mom, Aunt Caroline. I'm saying he killed your best friend, and now he's going to take your kidney, and you're going to be stuck with him forever because that's what he wants. He wants to own you, just like he owned her." The room erupted. Dr. Brennan immediately called for security while barking orders at her team to halt the procedure. The anesthesiologist disconnected the IV line. Nurses rushed to unstrap me from the gurney. My mother came running through the doors, her Chanel heels clicking against the linoleum, her face a mask of horror and fury. "Jackson Oliver Bennett, what the hell are you doing in here? Get out right now. You're ruining everything." Jackson didn't move. He stood his ground, this tiny, brave, broken little boy, and he looked at my mother with the kind of defiance that made my heart crack open. "No, Grandma, I'm not going to let Aunt Caroline die too." My mother's face went white. She grabbed for Jackson, but he dodged her, running to my side, clutching my hand with both of his. "Please, Aunt Caroline, please listen to me. Please." I squeezed his hand back, my mind racing, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. Ryan, my brother, the golden child, the successful one, the one everyone adored. Ryan, who'd married my best friend Natalie 6 years ago in a ceremony that cost more than most people's houses. Ryan, who lived in a sprawling estate in Pacific Heights, who drove a Porsche, who worked in venture capital, and threw parties where champagne flowed like water and everyone laughed and nobody ever questioned anything. Ryan, who called me 3 months ago in tears, telling me his kidneys were failing, that he needed a transplant, that I was the only match, that he would die without me. Ryan, whose wife Natalie had died 8 months ago from a mysterious illness that baffled every specialist in San Francisco, an illness that came on suddenly, violently, leaving her a shell of herself before she finally slipped away in a hospital bed while Ryan held her hand and wept. Everyone said it was a tragedy. Everyone said Ryan was devastated. Everyone said Natalie was unlucky, that sometimes these things just happen, that life is cruel and unfair. But Jackson was saying something different. Jackson was saying Ryan killed her. Dr. Brennan was speaking into her phone now, her voice low and urgent. My mother was still trying to pull Jackson away from me, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his arm, but he wouldn't let go. Caroline, this is insane. The boy is traumatized. He doesn't know what he's saying. We need to get him out of here and proceed with the surgery before Ryan's condition deteriorates further. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I saw past the Botox and the designer clothes and the practiced smile. I saw desperation. I saw fear. I saw something else, too, something that made my stomach turn. She knew. My mother knew. She had known all along. You knew, I whispered, my voice barely audible. You knew what he did to Natalie, didn't you? My mother's face hardened. She released Jackson and stepped back, her arms crossing over her chest. I don't know what you're talking about. Your brother is dying, Caroline. He needs this kidney. Everything else is just noise. Noise? I felt the rage building in my chest, hot and sharp. Jackson just accused Ryan of murder, and you're calling it noise? He's a child, a grieving, confused child. Natalie's death was ruled natural causes. The medical examiner found nothing suspicious. This is all in his head. Then why are you so scared right now? My mother's jaw clenched. She didn't answer. Dr. Brennan ended her call and turned to us, her expression grave. I'm putting a hold on this surgery. Hospital policy requires that we investigate any allegations made in the operating theater, especially those involving potential criminal activity. Miss Hartley, you're free to go. Mr. Bennett's procedure will be postponed indefinitely. My mother exploded. You can't do that. My son will die. This is malpractice. I'll have your license for this. Dr. Brennan didn't even flinch. Ma'am, if you don't leave this room immediately, I'll have security escort you out. Your son's life is not in immediate danger. He's stable on dialysis. He can wait. My mother looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Dr. Brennan's eyes stopped her. She turned on her heel and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. The surgical team began to disperse, leaving me alone with Dr. Brennan and Jackson. I sat up slowly, my head spinning, my legs weak. Jackson was still holding my hand, his grip tight, his eyes red and swollen. Dr. Brennan pulled up a stool and sat down in front of us, her voice gentle now. Jackson, I need you to tell me everything you know. Can you do that? He nodded, swallowing hard. I can, but nobody's going to believe me. Nobody ever believes me. I believe you, I said, my voice breaking. I believe you, Jackson. And so, he told us how he'd been staying with Ryan and Natalie during the summer, how excited he'd been because his mom and Aunt Caroline were so close, and he loved spending time with them. He told us how he'd noticed Uncle Ryan acting strange, how he'd seen him sneaking into the kitchen late at night, how he'd watched through the crack in the door as Ryan poured something from a small vial into Natalie's vitamin smoothies, the ones she drank every morning. He told us how Natalie started getting sick a few weeks later, how she'd lose her balance, how her hands would shake, how she'd forget things, how she'd vomit in the middle of the night. He told us how the doctors ran test after test and found nothing, how they said it might be stress, might be an autoimmune disorder, might be something they couldn't diagnose. He told us how Natalie got worse and worse, how she ended up bedridden, how Ryan played the devoted husband, bringing her water and soup and medicine, never leaving her side. He told us how Natalie died on a Tuesday morning, how Ryan cried at the funeral, how everyone said what a good man he was for standing by her through it all. And he told us how, a month after the funeral, he'd found the vial hidden in Ryan's desk drawer while looking for a pencil, how he'd Googled the label and found out it was something called thallium, a poison used in rat poison, a poison that causes all the symptoms Natalie had. He told us how he tried to tell his dad, but his dad said he was just upset about losing his aunt, how he tried to tell Grandma, but she told him to stop spreading lies, how he tried to tell Grandpa, but Grandpa said children didn't understand adult things. He told us how nobody listened, and he told us how, when he heard that Aunt Caroline was going to give Uncle Ryan her kidney, he knew he couldn't stay quiet anymore, because if he did, I would end up just like Natalie. By the time he finished, I was sobbing. Dr. Brennan was pale, her hands shaking as she wrote notes on her tablet. She looked at me and said, "I'm calling the police. This needs to be investigated immediately." I nodded, unable to speak. Jackson collapsed against me, his small body racked with sobs. "I'm sorry, Aunt Caroline. I'm sorry I didn't tell anyone sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't save her." I held him tight, my tears soaking into his hair. "You saved me, sweetheart. You saved me." The police arrived 20 minutes later. They interviewed Jackson, interviewed me, interviewed Dr. Brennan. They went to Ryan's room and questioned him while he lay in his hospital bed, weak and pale and furious. My father showed up, demanding answers, threatening lawsuits. My mother refused to speak to anyone, locked herself in a waiting room, and called her lawyer. It was chaos. It was a nightmare. But it was also the truth, finally clawing its way to the surface. The investigation moved fast, faster than I expected. The police obtained a warrant to search Ryan's house and found the vial of thallium exactly where Jackson said it would be, tucked in the back of Ryan's desk drawer behind a stack of old tax documents. They exhumed Natalie's body and ran a new toxicology screen. The results came back positive. Thallium in her liver, her kidneys, her hair follicles, levels high enough to kill. The medical examiner who'd originally ruled her death as natural causes had missed it, had assumed it was organ failure from an unknown disease. But now the truth was undeniable. Ryan had poisoned her, slowly, methodically, over the course of months. He'd watched her suffer, watched her die, and then he'd played the grieving widower while everyone offered their condolences and nobody asked questions. The DA charged him with first-degree murder. The media went insane. Ryan's face was plastered on every news channel, every website, every tabloid. The golden boy of the Hartley family, the venture capitalist with the Midas touch, the man who'd fooled everyone. My parents went into hiding. My father released a statement through his lawyers saying they had no comment and requested privacy. My mother never spoke to me again after that day in the hospital. She blamed me, blamed Jackson, blamed everyone except the son who'd committed murder. I spent the weeks after Ryan's arrest trying to piece together why. Why would he kill Natalie? She'd loved him. She'd been beautiful, kind, successful in her own right as a pediatric surgeon. They'd seemed happy. But as I dug deeper, as I talked to Natalie's friends, as I went through her things that Ryan had boxed up and shoved into storage, I started to see the cracks. Natalie had been planning to leave him. She'd confided in her best friend Laura that Ryan had become controlling, jealous, paranoid, that he'd accused her of cheating even though she never had, that he'd started monitoring her phone, her emails, her schedule, that she felt suffocated. She'd been meeting with a divorce attorney, she'd been preparing to file, and then she got sick. Ryan must have found out, must have decided that if he couldn't have her, nobody would. And the sickest part? His kidney failure wasn't even related to Natalie's death. It was genetic, a condition he'd known about for years. But when Natalie died, when he found out I was a match, he saw an opportunity. He could play the victim, the dying brother who needed his sister to save him. And I, desperate to be useful, desperate to be loved, desperate to prove I was a good person, had almost fallen for it, almost given him the one thing that would have bound me to him forever. Because that's what organ donation does. It creates a connection that can never be severed. He would have used it against me for the rest of his life, reminded me constantly that he was alive because of me, that I owed him, that I could never say no to him, just like he'd done with Natalie. The trial was brutal. Ryan's lawyers tried everything. They argued that the thallium was planted, that Jackson was mistaken, that Natalie's death was still just a tragic coincidence. But the evidence was overwhelming. The vial with Ryan's fingerprints, the toxicology reports, Jackson's testimony delivered with a courage that left the entire courtroom in tears. And then there was the journal, Natalie's journal, found in the back of her closet, hidden in a shoebox under a pile of sweaters. She'd written everything, the fear, the suspicion, the growing realization that something was very wrong. She'd even written that she thought Ryan was poisoning her, though she'd convinced herself she was being paranoid, that it couldn't be true. But it was true, and she died not knowing for sure. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Ryan guilty. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. My father had a stroke 2 days after the verdict. My mother moved to Arizona and changed her phone number. The family I'd grown up with, the family I thought was unbreakable, disintegrated like ash in the wind. But Jackson and I, we survived. His father, Natalie's widower Paul, had been destroyed by her death. But when the truth came out, when he realized his son had been telling the truth all along, something in him shifted. He started therapy, started rebuilding his relationship with Jackson, started letting me back into their lives. We became a new kind of family, smaller, broken in places, but real. I sold my condo in the marina and moved closer to them, into a quieter neighborhood in Marin County, where Jackson could ride his bike and Paul could garden, and I could finally breathe. I started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, helping women who'd been trapped in relationships like Natalie's, women who'd been gaslit and controlled, and told they were crazy when they knew something was wrong. I found purpose in that, found healing. Jackson started seeing a therapist too, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, who specialized in childhood trauma. Slowly, the nightmares stopped. Slowly, he started to smile again. He called me once on a sunny afternoon when we were sitting on the porch eating ice cream that he thought his mom would be proud of him. I told him she absolutely would be, that she was watching over him, that she loved him more than anything in the world. He nodded, licking chocolate off his spoon, and said, "I think she's watching over you too, Aunt Caroline. I think she sent me to save you." Maybe she did. 2 years after the trial, I met someone. His name was Daniel, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and a terrible sense of humor. He didn't come from money, didn't care about status or appearances. He liked hiking and old movies and cooking elaborate dinners that usually turned out mediocre but were made with so much love that it didn't matter. He knew everything about Ryan, about Natalie, about the trial, and he didn't run. He stayed. He listened. He held me when I cried and laughed with me when I was ready to laugh again. We got married in a small ceremony in Paul's backyard, with Jackson as the ring bearer and Dr. Patel and Laura and a handful of other people who'd stood by us through everything. There was no champagne fountain, no designer dress, no 5-tier cake. Just love. Just people who mattered. My mother didn't come. My father couldn't, still recovering from his stroke in a care facility. But I didn't need them. I had the family I'd chosen, and that was enough. Ryan sent me a letter from prison. I almost didn't open it, but Jackson, now 10 years old and wiser than any child should have to be, told me I should. So I did. It was 3 pages long, single-spaced, written in Ryan's precise handwriting. He didn't apologize, didn't admit guilt. Instead, he blamed me, said I'd ruined his life by listening to a child's fantasies, said I'd betrayed the family, said I was selfish for refusing to give him my kidney even after he was convicted, even after his appeals were denied, even after it became clear he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars. He said I'd always been jealous of him, always wanted what he had, always tried to undermine him. He said Natalie had been planning to leave him for another man, that he'd only been trying to protect himself, that I couldn't possibly understand the pressure he was under. He said he hoped I was happy now, living my small, pathetic life, pretending to be a hero, when really I was just a coward who couldn't handle the truth. I read it twice. Then I walked outside, lit a match, and burned it. Watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. Watched the smoke rise and disappear into the sky. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just a quiet, settled peace that comes from knowing you made the right choice, that you listened to the truth when everyone else wanted you to stay silent, that you chose life over obligation, that you chose yourself. Jackson graduates high school next month. He's planning to study forensic science in college, says he wants to help solve cases like his mom's, wants to give voices to people who can't speak for themselves. I told him he's going to change the world. He laughed and said he's just trying to make sure nobody else has an uncle like Ryan. Paul's doing well too. He started dating again, a woman named Rachel who works at the local library and loves true crime podcasts and treats Jackson like he's her own. They're talking about getting married. I think Natalie would approve. As for me, I wake up every morning in a house filled with light. I have coffee with Daniel on the porch. I text Jackson stupid memes that make him roll his eyes. I go to work at the shelter and help women find their strength. I come home and cook dinner and watch the sunset and feel grateful. Grateful that I didn't get on that operating table. Grateful that Jackson was brave enough to tell the truth. Grateful that I'm alive, really, truly alive, not just breathing, not just existing, but living on my terms, free from the weight of a family that valued appearances over truth, free from the brother who would have drained me dry, free from the guilt that almost killed me. Ryan's still in prison. His health declined over the years. The kidney disease progressed. He's on dialysis 3 times a week. He'll never get a transplant. Convicted murderers aren't exactly high on the donor list. I don't think about him much anymore. But when I do, I feel relief. Relief that I saw the truth before it was too late. Relief that Jackson gave me the greatest gift anyone ever has, my life back. People ask me sometimes if I regret not donating the kidney before I knew, if I wish I'd gone through with it, saved my brother, dealt with the truth later. And I tell them the same thing every time. No. Because some people don't deserve to be saved. Some people deserve exactly what they get. And Ryan got justice. Not the kind he wanted, not the kind my parents tried to buy him, but the real kind. The kind that comes when the truth finally breaks through the lies, when a child's voice is louder than a family's shame, when a woman's death is avenged not by revenge, but by refusal. Refusal to be complicit, refusal to be silent, refusal to let a monster hide behind the word brother. I visited Natalie's grave last week. Brought her favorite flowers, white lilies that smell like summer. Sat on the grass and told her everything. Told her about Jackson, about Daniel, about the life I'm building. Told her I was sorry I didn't see what Ryan was doing to her. Sorry I didn't ask more questions. Sorry I believed the lie. But I also told her that her son saved me. That her courage, even in those final days when she was scared and confused, had given him the strength to stand up when it mattered most. That she'd raised a hero, and that I would spend the rest of my life making sure he knew how extraordinary he was. The wind picked up as I sat there, rustling through the trees, carrying the scent of lilies and earth and something else, something I couldn't name but felt deep in my bones. It felt like forgiveness, like release, like Natalie was telling me it was okay, that she understood, that she was proud. I stayed until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Then I drove home to Daniel, to the life I'd chosen, to the future I'd fought for, and I didn't look back. Because some stories don't end with happily ever after. Some stories end with survival, with truth, with the woman who almost gave everything to the wrong person, but didn't, who almost lost herself but found her way back, who almost believed the lie but chose to listen to a child who loved her enough to risk everything. That's my story. Not the one my family wanted, not the one Ryan tried to write, but mine. And it's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything.